Hey, good morning. I hate tech. Yes, I'm going to be doing some drums from scratch, particularly from some kind of analog synth, mainly so for Superior Drummer. And I'll be doing some processing and kind of walking everybody through that again. If you want more information, I already have some videos up on that stuff. But yeah, I'll be doing that from scratch. And then I actually want to try to recreate a patch from Phase Plant to make some kind of metallic drums. And yeah, it should be a good time. I'm just going to wait just a couple minutes for people to come in, and then we'll go ahead and get started. Resonates just finished work, so let's get into this. Welcome, welcome. Just give me like 2 minutes and we'll hop in. I'm all set up and ready to go. I'm just going to wait just a couple seconds and then we will hop right in. And you guys are more than welcome to ask questions along the way. Oi. I usually started playing just a little bit of guitar before I get started just to try to help some creativity flow a little bit. So I'm not that great, but I hope that you guys don't mind. Hopefully it's not like disgusting. Oh, what with the French toast? Alrighty. It's kind of hot in here. How is everyone doing today? My name is Alchemy if you have never been here, and today we are going to work on some drum stuff, assuming that my chair is going to lower. Okay, so let's talk about drums. Drums can come from anything, really. If you I, I don't know. It's kind of an archaic practice these days just because it's so easy to find amazing sample packs on, well, Splice or from other people. I have some stuff up on my Patreon if you are wanting to do the lazy route as well. But sometimes it's important or it's good to understand the mechanics of how all these work just because you will learn about transients and you'll learn about the relationship between all of the other music that is going on within a specified track. So today specifically we're going to be working on something that is going to be like hard hitting drums, but not from 808s, even though we might do some layering with that, but I'm going to show you guys how I process my drums typically, and then I'm going to show you how I layer them with electronic drums, so that way you guys can create heavier tunes that will kind of be mixed and matched, so to speak. So I do have some stuff that is from a template from something that I've made from before, but the way that I do that is I set everything to default, so that way I have to do all the processing from scratch. It's just the initial setup that I have as far as like the processing chain is something that I've already saved because I do it the exact same almost every single time. So without further ado, we're at 87 BPM right now, and we are going to switch this up to probably 95 or so, and we're going to just kind of start with the drum loop and go from there. Nikolai says, I'll look later. Thanks, man. Hey, no problem. Thanks for coming in and peeping what's going on. Let's go ahead and get started. So, this is Superior Drummer 3, and I have it set up in such a way that it's a template for me to just kind of make things a lot easier to use. From the starting point, you'll notice that I only have a very basic kit up. So I've got my hi-hat, got my snare, kick, cymbals, and one tom, and you'll notice that the tom is pitched up by 14 semitones. So from there, there's not really a whole lot going on, but the magic comes into the mixer, and this is just made in such a way. I don't understand anything. I'm from Russia. I'm sorry. You should hopefully still be able to kind of follow the process. So you can kind of just look at the synths and stuff that I use. You just might not get what I don't even know why I'm explaining if you don't understand. I'm sorry. Hello and welcome. Language barriers. I apologize. There's literally nothing I can do about that. But welcome. So the way that I have this set up as far as my default template is the first thing that I'm making sure is that nothing is bleeding into each other, and my kick channels are going into a specified bus. My snare channel is the same thing, and then my overhead / hi-hats are all going into one thing as well. If you notice here on the level envelope releases, that just basically means how much of the acoustic resonances, or more so rather the tails, are going to be. And if you look at all of the channels, you'll see that they've all been shortened, except for the hi-hats. I don't use the rack toms, floor tom, overhead dynamics, overhead condenser, ambience ribbons. I left that one alone. And almost everything else is basically shortened, so that way there's no tails, and that basically makes our drums completely dry. Now, when you're first starting out, this is really important, because if you have a lot of reverb or you have a lot of tails within your drums when you're first starting out, then it can be very easy to kind of ruin everything from all the distortion and processing that we're going to end up doing to this. So I don't want to spend too much time on that. It's just a basic overview of how I set things up. But what this allows me to do is I can go into here and I can literally change any drum and it will be kind of readily available. And it's very similar to something like Addictive Drums 2, which I have, I just don't use anymore because this allows me to have just a little bit more control. So I'm going to change up a kick maybe, and then we'll kind of look at some snare possibilities, and then we'll start processing from there. So I'm just going to find some stuff that I like, and then we will continue. I'm so glad that somebody bilingual is in here. I hate tech. You are the MVP. Thank you. Please don't tell him that I'm talking bad about him, because I'm not. All right, let's find a different kick. That one, I like that one. Okay, so now let's go ahead and find some kind of snare. That one is very ringy. Okay, yeah, I like that. And let's go ahead and choose from some hi-hats. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Okay, so as you can see, we have a really tight kit right now, and that's kind of that is desirable, long story short. Okay, so what I'm going to do now is I am going to just make I think I'm going to make some kind of jungle loop. And if you don't know jungle, then, well, you'll learn. Okay, so where's our kick? Let's turn this on. I wish I could turn that on by default. It's really annoying that it doesn't do that. Okay. And let's just go ahead and make 87. I want... Yeah, actually 87 should be okay. Dun, 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 dun. Dun, 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 dun. Nope. And I think that needs to be pushed back just a little bit further. And then maybe I can... There we go. Alright, so we can just kind of start off with 1 bar for now. 2 bars, I guess. Dun. Boom, boom, pop. Boom, pop, pop, pop. And then, yeah, so all that I'm doing right now basically is Gabor Perga just donated $3.30. Thank you so much. That's really kind of you. I really appreciate that. And again, at this process, I'm going to try to kind of keep everybody updated with what I'm doing. But if you have any questions, then please feel free to ask. Right now, I'm just building a basic jungle beat, and then we're going to process it here in a second. Okay. Actually, let's just not overcomplicate this. And if I want to add to it later, then I can. But now let's go ahead and add some hats. And the key thing that we're going to kind of focus on right here is creating some kind of shuffle. So that is because it's really close to my computer, which is hissing. Hopefully that's a little bit easier. Let me go in here and see if I can turn on a gate. Hold on 1 second. Man, it's showing me that that's really quiet. So that's really interesting that it's hissing that loud. Meters lie. If I can tell you guys anything. Wait, filters. Let me go ahead and add in a gate. Find something from kilohertz. Where are you at? Okay. Does that help at all? Is that a little better? Hopefully. Okay. Guess? Well, I just added a gate on there, so let's see. Okay, cool. All right. Yeah, so somebody somebody mentioned that to me before, but I just wasn't sure how much I needed, so I kind of depend on you guys to help me out with that kind of thing because I can't tell in my own headphones. If I turn direct monitoring off, then I get like even worse hissing. So yeah, thanks for bringing that up. Let's go ahead and continue. So yeah, I'm building a shuffle on top of this now, and it's just going to be something that's kind of funky and something that we can use to splice and dice, or what was the other one? Cut and something. I don't remember. And then we'll create a shuffle right here. I think that needs to be right here. And we can move that over. And then that, I guess that can be layered over that. So sorry, this is the boring part. Dun, 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 dun. Okay, and let's see. Okay, so now that I have a cool, actually, I'm going to use that later. And then let me find another stick hit. Okay, so now that I have it, I can go into a fold, and now I can just kind of start playing with this whole thing. So, but what I want to make sure to do is I'm just kind of trying to create a shuffle within this, but allow each main hit to have its own space. Because if this has too much bleed on it from this to this and this to this, then everything's going to kind of bleed into each other. And that's kind of why I was talking about keeping your drums nice and tight whenever you're doing, I guess, neuro drums or something from like drum and bass or something, if that makes sense. So let me see. Kind of split that off. Actually, let's try that one. And then right here, I might take that out, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to create just kind of that like shuffle. Okay, so that's not too crazy, but it's doable. And then I'm going to add just a ride on here. And then maybe another snare ride or something. Okay, that's fine. We can always come back to it here in a bit. All right, so that is just a nice easy loop or whatever. And it's nothing that is too complicated. So what we're going to do now is we're going to pull up this chain that I use called drum processing, and then there should be a default processing thing. Yeah, here we go. And then we'll talk about it, and I'll start processing it. Whoa, it's actually not that much. No worries. Okay, so this is my default overcompression chain, and basically what that means is it's going to overcompress these drums to the point that it sounds like they're breaking. And the ideology behind this is that it works pretty well for the fact that you're going to be layering solid transients under these anyways, so why would it matter if you break them? And that's kind of the thing with layering, is that as long as you have a solid transient to support these, then you can pretty much do whatever you want to them, and it usually sounds relatively decent. So I'm going to turn everything off except for, I'm going to start with the EQ, and then we'll just kind of go over and talk about each plugin. So generally what I would do is I would start with an EQ first, and this is just kind of taking out everything that is below, I want to say, yes, below 60 hertz. And that just kind of gives us space to add in some of those bass frequencies or sub-frequencies before we start doing everything else. And you can leave them in if you want. And I will say beforehand that before I started layering with clean transients, my entire EP was made this way without doing any layering other than this. So that's totally okay as well. I'm just trying to do it better now as opposed to just leaving the main kick and stuff in there. So don't feel like that's a must. 2K subs. Woo, woo. Yeah, thanks to you guys. So the EQ again is just kind of doing things, and it's just kind of making sure that nothing crazy is happening within these. If you want to pull out the high end more, then you can. If you want to dip out the low mids, you can as well. I hear a lot of talking and not much drums. Well, I'd assume that you'd also like to explain why I do this stuff. So next up we have a FabFilter Pro MB, and I guess this was the last setting that I used on this. So I'm taking out the lows and boosting the highs, or sorry, the mids and the highs. And you can tell that that makes a major difference within this. So but what I'm actually going to do is I'm actually going to pull this crossover a little bit because there's a kick that's happening right here. Sorry, that's the my bad, that is the snare. And so I'm actually going to create a second chain and just take out everything that's like super duper low right here. And then let's go ahead and actually boost this. And this is just a multi-band compressor if you haven't heard of this before. And let's go ahead and work on this kick for just a second. So I am going to do, no, it's okay. I'm not worried about it, guys. Let's turn the range up a little bit, turn the attack up, and the release up as well. That sounds pretty good. So next up we have some compression, and the only thing that I'm going to do is turn, oh, there's actually some saturation going on right here. So the attack and release is almost at the bottom, but if you turn this down to the very bottom, you'll see the slam thing come on. So I don't want to slam it by too much, but I'm just going to give it just a little bit of release, and then I'm going to just kind of turn up the compression just a little bit. Sounds pretty good to me. So to kind of recap, we've got 3 plugins on this so far that's made a really big difference. So the first one is the EQ. Sorry, that's not a big difference, but just as far as the main thing. Then we have some multiband compression, and then we have some saturation and compression on the supercharger. So now we're going to add some distortion. I think the default one is double stages. I'm actually going to start with the tape saturator first, but let's see how this sounds. Ears. Let me turn that down. I tried to save that if I could, looking at my stream. Oof. Oh, there it goes. It's like watching things unfold when you already know what's going to happen. Sorry about that. All right, so yeah, my bad. I wasn't expecting that to be so loud all of a sudden. So yeah, I'm going to start off with some tape saturation and just kind of see how that sounds. And before I do that, turn down your speakers just a little bit if these are bumping really loud. Okay, so you can tell that just adding that saturation that it's basically doing things, and we're going to kind of clean up those things. we're gonna try to clean up some things, and what's it called, and try to shorten those transients now. So what I'm going to introduce now is a transient shaper, and this is just one of them that I like to use. It's the CLA drums from Waves, and the only thing that I'm using basically is just the transient on the end, and that's just kind of cutting it. So if I turn it up, that shortens the transients, and then you have a hard and soft setting on there. So let's go ahead and listen to how that sounds now. Okay, so that sounds a lot better, but I think that there's just a little bit too much on the kick now, so I'm going to back off of that just a little bit. And then I think that I'm also going to tame this just a little bit as well. That sounds pretty good. So if we need some more tail or something and we need to do more things, then we can go ahead and mess with the transient shaper again. We can add more attack this way and also take out more of the sustain if we want to after the entire processing chain. But for the most part, this is really just the only thing that you have to do. So you compress the hell out of it, you make sure that it's shaping up with an EQ, and then you just destroy it with distortion and control it with transient shaping. So the kick and the drums, the kick and the snare sound pretty good, but it's kind of taking a little bit too much away from the hi-hats. And so now we're just kind of playing with that just a little bit to see if we can find a happy even in between. That sounds pretty good. So we have a drum loop now. And what we can do is we can record that. And from that point on, we have our first version. So let's go ahead and take a look at this for just a second. Look at those transients. That's really nice. And it's good too because you can look at the hats and see that the transients on the hats are relatively soft still, but that's a really nice snare and that's a really nice kick. And it's cool too because now that we have this as a drum loop, sometimes whenever you're doing things or you're trying to make something that's funky, you might want to start off like if I'm just doing something regular, so to speak, like or maybe I'm actually layering drums, I might want to start off with this with that crash over the top, and then on the next kick I might want to use this one. So it's a really cool way to start to add variation to that whenever you're doing these kinds of layers. But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to just honestly start changing some of this stuff. So that's pretty much the whole ideology behind all of these things is you create a version and we're just going to kind of create a couple of different ones and not really care about how clean they are or about how much we need to affect these because we're going to end up taking the transients out of these anyways, even though that they are pretty nice if you want to use them on their own. And we're just going to kind of use these different versions to layer on top of each other and basically create like a really thick drum pattern from that. So it's pretty awesome. Does anybody have any questions so far? Let's go ahead and try the blues driver. And what I'm going to do for all of us is I'm going to turn this down by quite a bit. So I am going to keep the limiter on, but I'm going to use a utility just so that in case if this gets really loud, it's not going to be overbearing. I like that version too. That's resampling from the master. So, oops, I need to set this channel to resample from... Hold on. Let me fix this on OBS instead. Yes, I do everything together. And the reason why is because I am not a fan of sending each thing out to each channel and then having to process them individually. Because when it comes to doing the kick and the snare, I'm going to be using a clean transient anyways. So this stuff, it's not important for me to do that, if that makes sense. I don't need to be that meticulous when everything on here is going to be used as a sub layer anyways. And that's kind of part of the fun of it, if that makes sense. The main kick and the main snare that is going to be kind of like an electronic kick and snare is what's going to be important for the sake of doing everything nice and easily. Sorry, that's not what I mean to say. For the sake of keeping it still listenable and clean. But under that, you EQ everything out, and then you kind of just do your layering on top of that. So it doesn't really matter, if that makes sense. Okay. And hopefully that's a little bit better for you guys. I turned that down in OBS just a little bit, just by a few decibels, so hopefully that's not too loud. But you can send them to a bus and add another bus compression. So because everything is in Superior Drummer, everything is being compressed on its own. And then once I start doing all the drums together, or once I start putting everything together in a track, then I have a separate drum processing thing. And then everything will have like a universal compression, if that makes sense. But I don't have to, just trust me, it'll work out. So let's go ahead and bounce that version out. I'm also going to take off the count in to save us some time. There's that version. And let's go ahead and try some different things. So I'm going to tame all of this stuff now just a little bit. Okay. And then I'm going to back off of this, give this a little bit more compression. Then we'll try a different means of distortion. So what was that one that I was doing last time? Hi, I want you to do a sound design stream, and when you use Portal, thank you so much. Best money I spent in a long time. Dude, Portal is like, is the best. It's so good. Yeah, I totally know. Like, okay, so after you make all these layers and you put everything up together, like, yeah, you are going to use a little bit more compression to glue, quote unquote, everything together. But as a means of right now, it's just a matter of creating tones and kind of like textures that you can use as layering, because it's not going to be like all these layers together at once. We're basically just giving ourselves some variation to select from, and then we'll layer like 3 things at once max. So don't, yeah, we'll get there. That one sounds a little bit more backed off, but a little bit cleaner. And what I want to do is just kind of make this just a little bit more fuzzy. So okay, so this is cool because you can hear that this one has more of a metallic sound in there that's pulling out that resonant tone. And that's why it's also important to, so because of something like this, that's why we're going to take those transients out, because if you listen, like, it's so distorted that that's not really going to be usable. But you can take something like this and fade that in and use that as a potential layer whenever we start doing stuff. So I'm not going to start a track today. I'm just going to kind of layer some breaks and give an example, but that's kind of the whole process of this in general. That's actually a clean break right there. I like that a lot. And how many layers you create doesn't really matter. It's just, again, just kind of giving yourself things to work with. So let me see. Let's try to do some more extreme things. That actually sounds pretty cool if we can tame that. So it's nice and noisy. I'm going to do myself a favor and turn this down beforehand. Then let's try something different. Maybe we'll do like one more and then I'll show you some stuff that I picked up from some things. I actually like that one a lot. So nice. There we go. Move that over. Those hats seem cursed now. Don't worry about it. We don't have to use the hats. It's fine. We can literally take hats from any of these. So if these are clean hats, like we can use all of that, and then we can kind of pick and choose between. So it's meant to be messed up. Of course. So here is the multiband thing that I'm doing. I have changed this from layer to layer, but basically I've taken out everything that's the super lows and then just added just a little bit of, I wouldn't really know what to call it because it's not quite expansion, but what I'm doing is I'm pulling the range up. So it's basically making it louder, and then, yeah, I'm just pulling all the knobs up. Oy. If you don't have FabFilter Pro MB, then you'll notice that I also have an OTT on this. So you can always just throw that on there as well, which is totally fine. Okay, so now that we have quite a bit of different layers to choose from, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go back to a clean setting on this. Actually, no, I think I already have a clean one, so let me find it. All right, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a new track, and I'm going to pull this down. Actually, I don't think that I need to pull it down. I can just use this one. Nope, just for sake, I can't make up my mind. And I'm going to group this, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to add in another instance of, I'm going to add in a sine wave to this. It's going to be really low. And I'm also going to layer that with just like some really freaking heavy distortion and noise. So hold on, give me 1 second. Let's pull up an operator. And let me listen to this. There we go. Okay. Let me turn this down by quite a bit. Okay, so now this is just going to be kind of playing consistently over this. And what I'm going to do is now just take another means of distortion, trash 2, and distort the hell out of this. Okay, let's play this together. Let's do it even more so. Throw in a saturator. Turn on soft clipping and then turn the output down. Okay, so that's just a little bit too loud. So I want it to just be just a little bit. And then on this, we're going to EQ that out. So what I'm basically doing is just I'm kind of forcing them into each other and then kind of taking some of that stuff out. I actually might already have a rack. Do I have a rack? That would save me some time. drum rack. I'll pull up a project here in a second. Processing. Okay, I don't, so it's fine. But yeah, so basically I'm throwing this in together. But I don't want any of that sub in there, so I'm going to EQ that out. I know, I'm doing that on purpose. Let's go ahead and throw a glue compressor on here. And let's just drive this up even more. There we go. So what this is serving as is just a totally like just wrecked layer. But what I'm trying to do is just barely get that tone in there. Okay, yeah, I think that sounds pretty good. So let's go ahead and bounce that out. Okay, so now that we have that, that is a secondary, just ultra distorted layer. So I can take this stuff and turn all that off, bring it down to the bottom. And from here, we can basically start building. So to kind of conceptualize, like we'll come back to this. So let me save this really quick and we'll call this stream drums. And then let me pull up a project file and I'll kind of show you. How this works. Okay. No worries, no worries. All right, so let me see here. Hold on, let me locate where I'm at and what I'm doing. But this is a similar project of kind of where everything is together, and so I'll kind of show you what I mean. Kick to resample. All right, so on here, these are all, I guess that's a similar project where I've made all the layers. Same processing. Let me see, I think this group is the overcompression thing again, I want to say. Okay. That's a snare. Okay, so this isn't the project file that I'm looking for, but it's okay. Let's go back to the, oh, it just quit on me. Nice. No. Hopefully that's going to be back up. Otherwise, I'm going to have to fix it. We'll go back to the stream drums, and I'll just kind of give you a piece of context about how all this stuff works. So hold on, give me 1 second while this loads. All right, so if you look right here within the sample pack, I have these drums in here somewhere. That should be here. Oh, okay. And I have these drums that should be, I think, right here. All right, so check this out. So here are some of the drum breaks that I've made from an earlier project, and you can kind of just listen to some of them. And so what you do is after you get into all of that stuff, then here are a couple full loop examples after we get into all the layering. So So after all that stuff, but basically the thing that we're doing on that other thing is a super layer, so it would sound something. But all that basically is just a really top heavy, how do I say, layer that you will cut the volume down and just use over a couple of certain parts. So yeah, I guess without all that stuff, as opposed to that, we can just get into doing some clean transients now. So let's go ahead and make a kick. The 7 is very good for neuro, possibly. It's all in the name of layering. So let's go ahead and just make a transient kick right now, and it's going to be something that's really simple, nothing that is even going to have that any processing on it in particular outside of this. It's just going to be something that we can use to layer over this entire thing. So I'm going to make a kick now. We'll layer in an F because everybody makes music in F, myself included. And let's just listen to how this sounds. Nope, I want just a little bit more. That's an A, so we're going to take this down to F. And it's still a little bit too boomy, so that sounds pretty good. So let's go ahead and that will be our first layer. Now we need a snare. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hop into Phase Plant. No, I changed my mind. I'm just going to make like a... yeah, maybe I will. But I'm going to probably end up having to balance this out, and then... how do I say? I'm going to have to bounce it out and then put it back in a sampler because Phase Plant is pretty CPU heavy. So if you guys have Phase Plant, there are some drum presets on here that are just freaking awesome. So listen to some of these. Not that one. That is probably meant to be more so for a, how do I say, like a top layer. But some of these in here, like this one is freaking incredible. Dude, that one is so good. Like as a starting point. All right, so this is probably one that we'll use, but I'm going to take out some of that tail. So find that. Let me see. Group. This isn't labeled. Grr. Okay, maybe I can just take out some of the decay on this. Okay, and then the noise oscillator is still really long. Okay. Let me find that. So basically what I'm doing is I'm just going in and looking at these envelopes and then taking out the release of a lot of this stuff. Because again, I just want it to be more so, like honestly, more so of a click with a little bit of sign pitching than anything else. So actually maybe I can ruin that, and there we go. That sounds pretty good. I'm going to need to do a little bit of processing after this though. So yes, I'm aware. Right there. Well, there's 2 on there, so it's okay. So it probably needs just a little bit more transient shaping anyway. I was looking for the envelope first before the transient shaper because it would be a cleaner way to edit the end of the noise tail, but it's okay. So okay, something happened. What happened? That just totally changed. That's odd. Okay. Oh, that's why. Okay. All right, so now what I'm going to do is just make this a little bit more beefy. I think that the actual transient on is fine. Oh, it was because of the sustain note. I was like, what the hell? Yeah, so the transient on this is fine, but I'm going to color this just a little bit. So let's see. Maybe I'll reach for some saturation first. And then I just want to see what happens if I put a soft sign on this. Nice. And let's go ahead and EQ this. And the theory behind this is that if I can kind of take care of this now, then I won't have to do really hardly any processing to this later. And typically a common practice on doing these kinds of snares is you can kind of just bump somewhere around 1,000 hertz just a little bit, and then you want to take out somewhere around 3,000 just a little bit. Okay, so let's listen to our kick. Okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to match the volume of this. So and then I'm also going to change the click of this. That sounds pretty good. Okay, so now we have some really solid drums that are going to serve as our main transients, and then from there we can sidechain everything else under that to these drums. So the first thing that I'll start to do within this is I'll kind of come in here and I'll just start trying to draw some kind of pattern. And the kind of idea that I had from when I first started this was more so of a means of something that was kind of like jungly. So I guess I'll just beatbox for a second and then try to think of something that I like. So okay, let's do here. We'll go here. Boom, boom, dot, dot. And all I'm doing now is just kind of drawing in some kind of jungly kick snare pattern. Okay, let's go in here. pop, 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 pum, boom. Okay, so this is really basic, but it's okay. So now that we have all of these things, I can delete that. Let's go ahead and set up our sidechain thing. And we're going to set this to kick. We're going to set this to snare. Phase plant, yeah. And then make sure that this is activating correctly. Okay, so I'm going to have to do pre-effects on this one and then probably pre-effects on this one as well. And this will be kick 2. This will be, where is it? Phase plant. Okay, so now that we have this set up, it's just a single bar, but we can basically just start taking all of these things and layering them within this stuff. So for the sake of, don't actually need that sidechain on there. I guess we can kind of just delete all of these. Delete. Now delete. And we can start dragging these in and then basically creating layers within them. So now for the fun part. And I think what I'm going to do is just create a couple of these channels because I know that I'm going to end up pulling some of this stuff out anyways. But what I'll do is I'll just try to match this up and take this. Actually, I'm going to use this kick here. And the key thing to this is making sure that you take out all the transients on these. So take this and go here. And I believe that needs to be there actually. It's actually kind of cool, but we're going to take that out. And then I want to shorten this. Hey, thanks so much. And for now, I'll just layer that there under that one. What is this? Okay. And take this one, cut this. Okay. That's actually cool. So I think that what I'll do is toss that there, toss that there. And I actually kind of like that this one is longer. That's pretty cool. But I need to add a kick right there. So we'll go here, add a kick. There we go. Let's take that out, take that out. And then I can add in another kick right here. Sorry, one thing that I need to do as well is I need to go in here and turn up the velocity. Hello, universe. Welcome. I'm making drums. And then let's go ahead and listen to how that sounds. So that sounds pretty cool. All right, so now what we do is we go find another loop. Take this one and let's place it down and just start messing with this and see how this sounds. So the first thing I'm actually going to do is I want to turn this down a little bit and okay. So I don't really need the kick of that, but I can layer this right here and turn this up just a little bit. And then if I want to be really crazy with it, I can do like panning and stuff, but I don't want to mess with that too much. So homemade weapons type of breaks? What is this weapons you speak of? Okay, so there's no kick right there, but we can move that over. And I might just take that part just to add in a little bit of variation and layer that in. And move that over here so that these two can layer on top of each other. And again, the only thing that I'm trying to be mindful of is clicks and making sure that there are no transients other than right here. He's a D&B producer. I'm surprised I haven't heard of him. And I might actually take out this one and use this one instead. Take out that one. And then roll off the transient on this. And then I can kind of just move this over just a little bit. Hopefully you guys can kind of see how this process goes. He writes some dark and deep stuff, not heavy but rolly. Are you starting off mixing into bus compression? No, I did all that beforehand. Well, I'm going to do that later, but what I did mainly was I made all of these different breaks and variations. And so what I'm doing is I'm layering all of these under a clean kick and snare. So, and then under that, everything else just kind of falls into place. So that way I can kind of create some kind of neat, crazy thing. But yeah, after all this, then I'll throw that all into a drum bus thing. And then we can do overall processing on the entire thing together. But right now I'm just trying to create like a really layered, funky break. Okay, some of the transients on this are a little bit too long for me, so I really want them to be a little bit shorter and more techy. So that one's a little bit too long as well. Let's try that. And then I'm going to add that right there instead. Thanks for the breakdown. Sounded good. Yeah, no worries. And then let's go ahead and grab another break. Throw it here. Let's listen to how this one sounds. Why is that kick that kick is so loud right there? Oh, it's probably because of the side chaining. All right, so let's go ahead and delete that. And I don't need that kick. I don't think that I need that snare either. And let's go ahead and just kind of move this into place, kind of right there. Actually, that click right there, or that kind of like tail end snare, sounds pretty cool. So we can maybe move that in like right there. Can move that there. Take that out. And move this over. And there's not really any rhyme or reason to this other than just trying something and then seeing if it works. But what we're doing is we're just kind of, again, just layering and creating breaks. You're literally breaking the thing. I like the ride on that. So that sounds pretty cool. Okay, so let's listen to how this sounds. I'm going to need some more stuff to fill in the spaces here, but okay, so one thing that I want to make sure to do is there are some sub-frequencies in here just from the overcompression, so I'm going to go ahead and remove that. And this is just on the sidechain channel right now, so it's okay. Normally what I would do is throw this in like percussion or something and then process that together, but it's all right. In the master, when you're doing bass mono, let's say around 120 Hz, is it fine if there are low synths, low mid bass is informational?